1692 means we got shots fired at 4:15 a.m.
Right, for more on this, let's bring in John Sheehan. He's a former Las Vegas Metro Police Department sergeant and a SWAT officer. Thank you so much for being here today. I know this is a community that you served and you care so much about. Today, a day of prayer. The vice president set to speak shortly. What are your thoughts here a week after the event?
Well, Molly, I think that there are a lot of questions that are still unanswered, as we all know. I think we know who did it, but we are still looking for the whys and the hows. Most of the hows have been addressed, but everybody wants to know why. And unfortunately, as we keep going through this process, we may never know exactly why. And I think that can be frustrating for all of us as human beings to not be able to understand this. And I think it's hard to make sense out of a senseless act.
We heard on Fox and Friends earlier today from Dan Bongino. Take a listen to what he had to say as far as motive is concerned.
I think we all need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that this guy had antisocial personality disorder, or what you would call, what we call in just normal talk, a psychopath, a sociopath, genuine evil, and people who live evil lives who have just no sense of empathy or consequence at all. And, I think we need to prepare ourselves that may be a possibility here. We may not get an easy answer.
What do you think of those words, his analysis as to what we may be facing as far as this individual and what he did?
I think he's spot on, because we also have to remember that apparently our shooter's father was a sociopath/psychopath, had a criminal background and a criminal history. So you take that and you understand that that type of person raised this shooter. And so how can it be anything else but that? And how can this person grow up and expect any sort of a normal life if he was raised by that type of a person? And that may be where this ends up going, because, as this goes on, we're at the precipice of possibility that there is any other explanation for this other than this person was just a psychopath with sociopathic tendencies.
Yeah, I mean, it's an inexcusable act. There's no rational reason to commit something as horrific as this.
Goes without saying, yes, absolutely.
Right. So when you're looking for an answer, what could possibly, where can you find the comfort on a day when so many in that community are seeking comfort?
Unfortunately, I think we're all just going to have to come to terms at some point in time that this was just a very bad person that decided to do something absolutely horrible, that we aren't going to have some sort of a evil mastermind, nefarious plot with other actors involved, and that we ran into a serious bad guy that was able to hide his tracks and carry out this nefarious act. And there really is no other way to make sense of this, and we just have to focus on not letting this happen again and being vigilant as a society in America.
As we wait for answers, there are a few clues, some of which we've known because they've been announced by investigators. One of the things that stood out over the course of the last week was they said that he had planned to survive. Of course, we know that they say he committed suicide as the officers were closing there on the room, but that there was some evidence that he planned to move on from that hotel room. One of the things they found was the car, the tannerite, the ammonium, all these materials in his car. Could that have been the next destination?
Personally, I think from my experience, I've got a pretty good experience with active shooters. And I believe, yes, that he had other locations in mind. I think that this person obviously knew at some point in time that they were going to forfeit their life, that as soon as they began this, that at the end game, they were going to die, but that he had other targets in mind. But after the initial shooting, after being discovered by the security guard and shooting the security guard, his options became limited as far as getting to points B, C, D, and E to continue his rampage.
Yeah, the dozens of weapons collected from 4 different states. We know that some were at a residence as well. Do you believe then that the hotel room was essentially a first domino, that the car could have been a second domino, that a home may have been a third domino, that sort of thing?
I do, because we have the van. It still has the ammunition, the explosives in it. Remember, we didn't find the other weapons in Mesquite or up in Reno until after the fact, which gave him access to more weapons, more ammunition. he could have continued his rampage. Remember, we're also dealing with a delusional person that doesn't believe that we're smart enough to catch them possibly, or that they're going to keep going and we're not going to be able to stop them, that they don't understand that, well, we're going to know who you are because you rented the hotel room in your name, and as soon as you leave the property, you're going to become the most wanted man in the world. So this person probably really did believe that they were going to be able to continue that rampage for some time and continue the killing spree.
As we talk about the question why and the possibility that this was a psychopath, someone with mental problems, very often in the wake of a big event or a shooting, there had been red flags. The neighbors saw something, the girlfriend, the wife, the friends. There were and we haven't heard a lot from those folks in this case, that he was a quiet guy, that he kept to himself, that he looked for his privacy, but there didn't seem to be the red flag of violence.
No, there wasn't, Molly. And really, when you think about that, who really could have got in there and found anything out to alert us to the possibility of this? The only person is his girlfriend. She lived with him. That was the only person that he let even partially into his world. And that's, I believe, through the course of these interviews, we're trying to find out, we're trying to glean information from her just how far into his world that she was able to get in order to find out more about his motives.
The argument's been made by the girlfriend, by the sisters, that she possibly was sent away and that she didn't know about this, and that's why she ended up in the Philippines during the course of the shooting. Is that common for perpetrators to send those they love or want to protect away when they're going to commit an act?
Actually, what's common for an active shooter that's planning on something on a mass murder scale would be to start by killing their own family members or killing the family pet, and that's like the starting point. That's where they begin. So for him to not kill her and send her away, I thought was kind of an interesting point. As I've seen with active shooters, and the history and the victimology and methodology of active shooters are that they'll often start at the home or kill close relatives before moving on with a rampage at other locations. So that was pretty unique as far as I was concerned.
There have been a number of things that analysts have said have been unique about this case. What else do you see as being standing out as far as this particular case is concerned?
Just we're dealing with the person, their age and their background and where they come from, and the fact that this person had a lot of money, and what possible motive could this person have to do this. You're dealing with a 64-year-old man. He's very patient. He took his time. He did his research. No military background, but obviously knew a lot about things like tracer rounds and the explosives that he had stored away, and what type of weaponry to use and put together. This indicates a pattern of research and long, methodical tactics and training, and looking to do something like this over a period of time. Quite interesting that he's able to do that without being discovered, without anybody thinking anything was out of the norm.
Does that stand in counter to a potential diagnosis of mental illness or of being a psychopath, or does that not have any reeling on that?
I'm not sure, because now we're getting a little bit out of my wheelhouse and we're talking about criminal psychology, but you would think, again, you would go back to the girlfriend and ask specifically, while she's living under the same roof as he is, what were his tendencies, what was he doing, and if she did see something, why didn't she alert anybody to it? And then people in the neighborhood, if something isn't right, why didn't you report it? And we all have those little voices in the back of our heads that say, something's not right and I need to tell somebody. But in our society, we're often so afraid to offend or get in trouble, we don't do that. And I think that's going to need to change over time when we're dealing with somebody like this, who obviously is psychopathic and is showing those tendencies. They've got to eke out in some ways in the public when they're out and amongst other people.
All right, Mr. Sheehan, thank you so much for your insight.